So this is the story of my sweet baby girl, Feighlyn. The story starts with me and my husband were stationed in different states, and finally I got to go to Florida. I was stationed in Washington for 2 years, so we finally got to be together. I moved down there in about August of 2012. Everything was going great, and then I found out I was pregnant. We weren't expecting it, but that's okay. We went and did ultrasounds, we did the blood works, we did everything. Everything looked good, and then we went to find out the sex of the baby. We went to a place called Stork's View. We got everything done. I just remember that day, she kind of kept concentrating in a certain area, and she kept asking me, "Oh, you guys have been to the doctor, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And she just kept concentrating in a certain area, but I kind of ignored that because I was just so excited. We found out we were having a girl, and we got to tell the whole family. And then I remember we went to the Cracker Barrel afterwards because the day before I took pictures of pink boots and brown boots at the Cracker Barrel. And we were going to go back the next day when we found out to take the picture of the sex of the boots were going to be. So then I remember we were sitting down at the Cracker Barrel. We had just left the Stork's View, probably like an hour later. And then we found out they had asked us if we had ever had any concerns. And I said, no, we haven't. And she told me that we were going to be getting a phone call from the manager of the company. And I said, okay. So then we got the phone call, and the manager of the company said that the ultrasound tech showed us the ultrasounds. She had been worried and that we should go see our doctor as soon as possible. And of course, this is my first pregnancy ever. I had 2 miscarriages before that, but this one actually stuck. So we were concerned. So I was like, okay. And she said, just get to the doctor ASAP. And I was like, okay. So I made an appointment with my doctor, and then we did the blood work, the extra blood work and everything. And then I remember my doctor calling me and said, there's something not right. We're going to send you, because I was going on base, we're going to send you off base to a specialist. And I was like, okay. So we went to the specialist, waited forever, filled out paperwork, and then we finally sat down with the specialist, the manager of the specialist place. And then she told us that Feighlyn had an Omphalocele. At this point, it was still too early, but she said that it was ruptured and that we'll have to go from there. She always gives us that talk, but I had no doubt that I was going to end anything. So I just remember leaving the office, and I just broke down in tears, called my whole family. But from there, we saw the doctor every single month. We got to do the ultrasounds, join the support group, the MOOs. And then we just prayed. We got to see our baby girl grow. She was a good weight, but I had excess water. So she was just a little bit tiny, but they said that's no concern. We had to have the talk, of course, about natural and C-section. And of course, we were going to have to go C-section. Because when they looked at her Omphalocele, it was the ruptured, and they said there was more organs out than they would be comfortable with me pushing out. But other than that, everything was pretty good. I pretty much got up to 200 pounds with her because of the excess water. But other than that, everything went great. We had a date set up for her, but unexpectedly, she wanted to come at 5 o'clock in the morning. I actually had contractions, so we rushed off to the hospital. And on April 11th, 2013, at 5:13 a.m., she was born. She was 6.5 pounds. I will never forget the noise when they cut me open, and I had so much water that I heard it just splash on the floor. They said that was the most water they had ever seen. I was about 36 weeks and 4 days. Other than that, she was beautiful. She had a silo. The ruptured O contained her liver, stomach, gallbladder, and both intestines. Her weight went up and down. She was put on a different ventilator. She pretty much had surgery right away, trying to keep her in that silo. I got to see her probably, a week after she was born, but my husband kept sending me pictures. We were in different hospitals. She had gotten rushed off by a helicopter to a different hospital because the doctor she was supposed to see wasn't there that day. So she got sent to Shands in Jacksonville, Florida. I remember the first time I got to hold her, she was put on an oxygen tube, and it was the best day of my life. Holding her was unbelievable. I'm trying to think everything. She was just the best looking baby in the world. She had 10 fingers, 10 toes. Her eyes were just that gorgeous brown, which me and my husband had argued because I thought they were going blue, but he said no, they're going brown, just like her dad's. A few days later, she was put back on the ventilator. And that day, I think it was May 5th, she had opened her eyes for the first time. And after that, it was just open eyes and smiles. Pretty much within the month, she was wiggling, and we brought in some mobiles and we brought in some toys just for her to be able to play with. She was on and off again with oxygen, being ventilated. Her weight just kept going up and down. She would swell up and then she would go down. A few times I had to give her morphine because she got fussy, which is understandable. She was a baby. And then actually, at about a month and a half, we actually got another Omphalocele baby across the hallway. I got to meet her parents, and they were also nervous, so we would talk all the time when we would see there. So with Feighlyn, they kept worrying her. Her heart rate would go down a lot. So then they had talked about putting her on more morphine. And then one day she got x-rays and they noticed that she had a kink. So we were trying to talk about that. And then also they had talked about putting her into the big girl bed. She got to go into her big girl bed. She started feeding again in the OJ tube. We were hoping that the next days were going to be good. The nurse said the x-rays came back as no known official blockage. So then we were going to wait and see. On June 3rd, Feighlyn weighed about 8 pounds, 14 ounces. She went on a field trip to the surgeons because she pulled out her OJ tube, of course. So they put the tube in her nose. And then she got to meet also her grandma and grandpa, Fancher. They were coming in the next day. So we were excited about that. She started feeding a lot. She was feeding off my milk. And and then she kept pulling her ventilator tube out. And then with her feedings, they kept going up and down. Her ventilator is a AVE A1. And then we had wondered if she was going to stay on that, or if we were going to have to do a trach. Every day we would go visit her. Her daddy loved playing country music for her. And then I'm just reading from her journal. She pulled out her OJ tube again. And then we were feeding. She moved to the big girl bed around June 10th. And she had pulled her tube out again. And so we had talked about the trach. It wasn't something that I really wanted, but they said for her being able to wiggle, being able to move, it would probably be the best thing. So we talked to the surgeons, and we went from there. She was just the most beautiful baby. I remember the first time I got to change her diaper, I was terrified. First time mom, and of course, with a baby in the NICU, I just didn't know what to do. I remember the beeps. I remember the sound. We had the best nurse in the world, April. She was just amazing. She was there for us all the time. We actually got text updates from her, actually, when we were away, just so I knew that everything would be good. Other than that, we went through some holidays. We got to go through 4th of July, Father's Day. Everything was going good. I remember we actually started doing the trach training after she got her trach in. We would always get to, try it and everything. But I remember she was so much happier, so much alert. She was so much better on the trach. I was so glad that we got to do it. I got to hold her a lot more. I remember the day that she got her trach in. I think it was June 24th. She actually got baptized that day also. And then she had her trach in. And within 3 days, she was just so much happier. Again, though, she kept ripping her tube out. And then for some odd reason, they just couldn't figure out why sometimes her feedings wouldn't go in. She would have stuff spew back out. It was actually a lot. So we were trying to figure out why this was happening. I remember she got blood work done and she actually had yeast in her blood. So they put her on more meds, trying to see if that would help. But it didn't really. They were kind of worried that in her O, that there was a kink. So we had talked about that again. I remember giving her baths. I remember everything. And then I remember when she gotten an infection. It was the yeast infection in her blood. She had gone really downhill, and I was just terrified. She pretty much was the strongest little girl I'd ever met. Every day she had a smile on her face. I even remember I got a video when I was at work, and the nurse had turned her bed out, so she pretty much was staring at everybody that was walking by. Everybody knew her, and then everybody just would go in there to say hi to her, and she would just stare at them with big brown eyes. I do remember when we actually brought her videos in. We brought her a little DVD player, and we would play Homeward Bound. We'd play just All Dogs Go to Heaven. We actually had Nemo. We just had a bunch of movies that we brought in for her. She just loved it. And I remember in July, when the nurse had sat her up. That was probably one of the best days. Also, that's one of her most memorable pictures, is her sitting up with a big old headband and her purple bunny in her hands. She just loved that purple bunny, which is the funny story because I did not like the color purple. But a friend of ours, they gave us a little purple bunny, and she loved that purple bunny. She loved it so much. It was just ridiculous. So ever since then, my favorite color is now purple. Let's see, in March, she got up 10 pounds. So everything looked like it was going good. We actually entered her to get that new car seat, the Omphalocele one. And we were put in for it, but we were just waiting on when our home time would be. We started getting the talks from all the medical companies that come to your house, and we started just discussing all that. We were looking up. We chose a company to work with us. We were going to have a live-in nurse. So at home, me and Dad we were just talking about it. We were going to put like a little mini fridge in there for the nurse and all of that. We started practicing the trach. We were talking about the day that we were going to do like an overnight at the hospital to see how we would do with her alone. And then I remember that they had the talk. They said that they wanted to try to fix her kink. So I said, okay. And I remember the doctor saying, well, while we're in there, we can see if we can try and push that in again. And I didn't know. I was like, okay, that's fine. So I remember that we went in, I believe it was August 15th. She had the surgery. It was 11:45. She went in, and gosh, that surgery was the longest surgery of my life. She was in there for about 7 hours. They came out and they said that they had to remove her gallbladder. They had talked about it, but it was at the point where it just had to be removed. So we said, okay. Little did we know that when she came out, it was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of discomfort. I remember staring at her after the surgery, and her heart will beating irregularly. When we went in, she was very bad condition. The doctor said she was very swollen. And I remember that her nurse that we always had was not there that day. So I had texted her and called her in, because I just didn't feel like something was right. So I just remember at that point that I got a little worried. And then I remember, I believe it was 6:00 in the afternoon, on August 17th. It was about 10:12, and she had passed away. I remember getting the call when we were at Mexican restaurant, and they said to get in here. And so me and my husband, we lived about an hour away from the hospital, so we rushed there. I remember we were going in to wash our hands, and I remember at that moment they told us to stop washing our hands, and I instantly just knew that she was gone. Our favorite nurse was there, and she had met me and my husband at the doorway, and she just said sorry. I remember it every second. So we went in there, and the nurses had wrapped her up, and I couldn't believe it. So we got to hold her, probably for a good few hours until we had to go, and they had to take her. She had blessed this earth for 128 days, and she was the best thing that ever happened to me. She made me a mommy and her dad a daddy, and she had touched so many lives with how much she was a fighter. And I tell her brother and sister about her every day. They just know that they have a big sister up in heaven who's their guardian angel. I just remember everyone that had supported us, and everything. My command was amazing. We had the funeral for her with her ashes on base. I remember my whole command, they had dressed up in their dress uniforms for her. And then I just will never forget it. She was the best thing in the world that had happened to us. And she will never, ever be forgotten.